Hello.
Hi. My name is Cecilia Conway. I'm 21 years old. I use she, her pronouns, and I identify as a woman. And for a very long time, I identified as asexual. Now, I would probably say I'm demisexual or just bisexual, and maybe demi-romantic, but yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
My first question to you is how comfortable do you feel in your gender/sexual identity, and are they at different levels of comfortability?
Um, they're definitely at different levels. I personally have never, at least so far, gone through a gender crisis like many of my friends have. I feel very comfortable in the world, like existing and being perceived as a woman, um, by people. Probably barring, creepy reasons, because being a woman does suck in that regard. Um, but other than that, definitely fine with being AFAB, my sexuality. Let's see. How comfortable am I? Only sort of comfortable, I would say recently, maybe. Because like I said before, I identified as asexual for a really long time, from like a young age. During that time, I also identified as aromantic because I thought that I didn't, because like I'd never really had a crush before. And I was at age like 14. So I was like, how have I never had a crush before? Like probably something is going on. Um, so that's what I thought was going on then. Um, but a couple years after that, I did end up dating somebody. So romantic didn't quite really cover that anymore. So then I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm like asexual but demi-romantic. And so, that continued like that for a little while. And I kind of like once I graduated high school, I kind of stopped like publicly labeling myself or like coming out to people as like asexual, like, upfront, like how I used to, which was like it was kind of like both a social and like a personal comfortability thing where being asexual is kind of difficult, I would say, because it is a lot of even people in queer communities don't really understand it or are, like a little aphobic, which I've definitely experienced when I was in high school, both from like people being like, that's not a thing to like people being like, oh, well, it's a thing, but like you're not, that doesn't make you queer or, like
Yeah.
stuff like that, which is just both of those are just bad.
Yeah.
Um and so like I just didn't it was just like tiring to like explain to people,
Hmm.
who were not like the girls that get it, and the girls that don't, they don't get it. So it was just I was just kind of sick of it, just explaining it. But I felt like comfortable feeling like that, I
Hmm.
would say. I just didn't like make it as public as I used to. Like it used to be like a big thing that I would tell people about. Like that was like an interesting fun fact about me. And then it was just more like a low-key thing.
Yeah.
Because I think also it made it difficult to like be perceived as dateable by people. Like,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
it's definitely something that it wasn't an issue when I was younger because nobody's sexually active or they really aren't when they're like 14, 15.
Yeah.
So it's like not a big deal. But when you get older, it kind of is a big deal, and people are like, "Oh, well, if that's not an option, then like I'm not going to pursue you," which is a little
Yeah.
bit like, uh, you know, harmful and disconcerting
Yeah.
because asexuality is a spectrum, and people shouldn't assume that. And then sort of now, like I don't want to say that I've like totally abandoned it, but like I don't want to be like invalidating to other people who are asexual by like saying that I am still asexual. But I also like something about like the way that I like am attracted to people, I don't think is like I don't want to say normal. I don't want to use the word normal, but like
Because what does
of the
that mean?
norm, like
Yeah.
classic, like what the majority experiences. Since I recently, like in the past, like maybe couple years, like started to realize that I actually like women, because I used to think that I was just hetero, like romantic or heterosexual.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just like say that I'm just bisexual. Like I just say that I'm bi usually, and that just
Yeah.
like that just kind of covers it mostly for people. And then if it's like if people want to know, or if I like foresee it becoming a thing that I should get into, then I'll like maybe get into like my history with the asexuality label. But it's not as big of a thing as it used to be. And I think that that was uncomfortable for a little while going through that transition, but I am surrounded by a lot of people who are very open to like, changing and growing with
Mhm.
your like identities. So it hasn't been like a very difficult process for me, I would say.
Like, what was the coming out process like for you? And then under that, she kind of already answered. Do you feel like the support you had when you were coming out or lack thereof affects how comfortable you are in expressing your gender or sexual identity today?
Mm. Well, the coming out process was like it was kind of an accident. Kind of like how I said previously, lots of people don't have a lot of experience with the asexuality label. So like being in a queer friend group in middle school meant that pretty much everybody was like open and learning at the same time. So as like the person who got to introduce that to people, like people were pretty okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
At least like people that I immediately interacted with. But I was like involved with forming the first GSA at my middle school. And so that was like something that I was like, telling my mom about that I was like involved in. And so that kind of like led to her being like, why are you being such a supportive ally, like what's
Yeah.
going on here? I really love gay people. Yeah, no, I accidentally said we in reference to the LGBTQ community, and then she was like, why did you just
Then,
say we? And I was like, and so then I had to be like, well, I'm actually asexual. And then she's like, I don't know what that is. So and then I was like, great, cool. She had to go on Google, figure out what that was. So that's kind of how that was. And my parents were kind of like fine with it. They were just kind of like, okay, like I don't really get it, but they weren't like gonna kick me out of the house, because
yeah.
it's not like it wasn't like I was like coming out as a lesbian. I already had a girlfriend, it wasn't like
Right.
that extreme. It was just like this theoretical thing. And once again, I was really young. So it's
Mhm.
like the age that I wasn't having sex with people. So they were like, okay, like this, it's not like an impactful thing,
Yeah.
really. But later coming out like as bi, I don't really tell people about that. Like people
Yeah.
just know. Like my friends, I just like talked about this girl that I started liking. Um, and I haven't told my parents about that because like I feel like when you're younger, like coming out is more important, or it seems like a big deal. But then when you're older, it's just like nobody really cares.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna start dating like somebody of the same gender, like you just go and do it. Like I don't think people really make it as big of a deal anymore. So
Yeah.
I don't really have much of an experience like coming out as bi because I don't like tell people about that. You
Yeah.
can just figure it out. And as like a person who is like I identify with the gender that I was born with, like I don't have to have like a daily, coming out experience because like 90% of the people that I interact with on a daily basis don't need to know that I'm bi or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
it's not really like it doesn't impact my like day-to-day interactions with people in the way that like I think being like trans or non-binary like would be, which I'm grateful for.
How do your friends, family, peers, loved ones, community, blah, 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 support you now? And are there ways that you wish they would support you instead?
My friends are very supportive. I am very lucky to have lots of queer friends, lots of trans friends. Like I don't know. That's how you kind of know that you're gay. It's just like everybody you know is gay. So
Yeah.
obviously, no problems in the friends department.
If you don't know the gay cousin, you are the gay cousin.
Yes, I'm definitely the gay cousin. I feel very supported by like all of my friends and stuff. And I think my parents would totally be fine if I like started dating like a woman. Personally, like I don't really care what they would think, but they're definitely open-minded in general, so I don't think that like me doing that would be like a super shock to them.
Yeah.
Um, but my extended family members are not as great. Like as I said previously, like I used to experience like some aphobia from like some people, and one of those was my aunt. Like she was very like she went to like college in New York in like the 80s and whatever, and she had like a bunch of gay friends, so she thinks that she's like, you know, this like
Gay
great
expert.
ally to like the
Yeah.
gay people, which is like literally only like white gay men in her mind is like what the gay community is. Struggles to use the correct pronouns, and like when I came out as asexual, like she was the only extended family member that I bothered telling because I thought that she would like, you know, understand it.
Yeah.
And then she was just very much like, well, you can't know that because you're only 14 if you never had sex before. So I was like, okay, sick. And so I feel like that was her like projecting onto me that I was going to be like forever alone if I like decided this about myself.
Yeah.
Which I didn't love because I could tell it's exactly what that was. We've gotten into fights about it before, and also about her like being transphobic to like my other cousin. So I just like tried to minimize my interactions with her because she sucks. That's pretty much like the most negative, I think, thing, but I'm able to like work around that. So
How do you express your gender slash sexual identity at home, with your friends, in your community, or to strangers?
good question. Sarah, nice question. I would say like my hair,
Mm.
you know, not to give a stigma to dyed hair, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like lots of gay people have dyed hair. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, you know, I see people out in public and people are like, oh my gosh, I love your hair. I'm like, thanks.
You?
I really like your Doc Martens. Like I was at I'm at my job, like I do like special events. So I was at a wedding recently and there was like this like lesbian couple who were some guests, and I like went over to them because one of them was wearing a suit and one of them had on these really cool embroidered Doc Martens, and I went over and I was like, oh my gosh, I love your Doc Martens. And I was like, because I had on mine because I wear them to work, and I was like, I'm wearing my docs too, but mine aren't cool because I have to be in uniform. And she was like, oh my god, that's thanks so much, like I love your hair. And I was like, sick. Queer to queer communication right there. Being bisexual is kind of like a recent thing for me, so it's not like I have like a bunch of like bi like shit that I like have, so people like strangers know.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's very easy to like slide that in, I think, if you're like having an in-class discussion and you can be like, women are hot. I think that's kind of basically it. Like I could like maybe I could definitely be straight passing if I didn't have my hair dyed. But since it's dyed, I get clocked like pretty fast and
Yeah.
pretty easily on a regular basis. So,
How do you look for gender slash sexual identity in other people?
oh yeah, definitely like clothes. Honestly, vibes. There's lots of like, you know, lingo, like words
Mm-hmm.
people will use where you're like, maybe you're gay. But also, I think it's just like if you are a gay person and you just interact with gay people, there's just that underlying understanding
Mm-hmm.
that you feel with people. I don't know, but I think I'm also a person who maybe struggles a little bit with trying to decide, especially if I'm interested in someone, like
Mm.
trying to decide if they're gay or not.
Okay, so how has your gender slash sexual identity expression grown or changed over time?
Oh, I didn't even mention my haircut. I used to have I just used to grow my hair out of my head.
Just growing it right out of there.
Just growing it right out of there. I had bangs when I was a child, and then I got rid of them. Then like last spring, it's been over a year now. I cut my hair. And I very specifically got a man's haircut, like I got like a boy haircut.
Yeah.
It was definitely like a longer boy haircut, but it was like I went into the salon with a Pinterest board of only pictures of men for my haircut. And I never had a haircut like this before. Like when I first got it, I had like it was much shorter like in general, and then I had like some shorter pieces up here, and like when I put it back, it was very like gender neutral, I would say, which I kind of struggled with a lot because like I liked how it looked and I liked how it was manageable, but like part of me still missed like having my long hair and like being able to do things with it that I like associated with femininity, which was like putting it up in a bun and like being able to braid it and stuff like that. So since then I have like grown it out. I guess that is something that I didn't really think about as like a gender experiment of like getting a male haircut and then just being like, okay, I don't think that's like for me, you know?
Yeah.
But it was definitely a gayer haircut. And like I feel like when I went out, it was like people were like, okay, something's going on here. Yeah. Yes. And so then I still sort of have the haircut. It's not obviously the way that my hair was before. Still that it's longer. And then I dyed it. So then it was like a combination of the two. Well, I have all my roommates are gay. So if I like put something on, you know, I think we're all very aware of like, do I look gay enough to like go out and have people know that I look gay? It's like, okay, this outfit doesn't look gay enough. So like let me tug at my shirt, like let me put on a belt. Let me get like a cardigan or a flannel like out of the closet, even though it's fucking hot, or like okay, it's even though it's cold, like I'm gonna wear this crop top, you know, like hot girl winter or whatever.
Like I'm gonna get an iced drink from Starbucks even though it's 30 degrees
Yes.
outside.
Yes. I had a discussion with another gay person recently. I think it's because they're British, so things are different over there. But they were like, why are you guys drinking cold, like iced chai tea? And I was like, because you put some milk in it and then it's a latte and then you drink it iced.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, are you drinking hot chai with milk? Like a hot chai latte? And they're like, yes. And I was like, that's disgusting. There's that,
We'll
oh
know
my God,
something's wrong.
the keychain also. Carabiner on the keychain. You gotta have the keychain on the hip. That's how people know you're a lesbian. Just people that you drive. You're driving gay.
As opposed to
A gay who can't drive. Yeah, you can be a non-driving gay who has to like bike everywhere. Or you have your skateboard. Or walk.
The driving versus non-driving gay division. Very tumultuous. So this one's kind of longer because it has a quote in it, but this was the article. So we had to read this article a couple weeks ago for this class called Keeping Bisexuality Alive, where it was a study done on a bunch of bisexual women who were in straight monogamous relationships and how they kept their sexuality alive like in other ways, because when they would go out in public they were like straight passing couples, you know, so they had to like some people talked about like the way that they decorated their home, or the like the lingo they would use, the things they would wear, like the music they would listen to, or just like the atmospheres they would create for other queer people to be like, hey, like I want you to know that this is a queer space, you know, whatnot, like you're safe here, all kinds of stuff like that. But specifically, they talk about the concept of gender as a performance, and they talk about how displays of gender rely on traditional notions of what we understand as a culture to be masculine or feminine. So like hair, clothing, makeup, and that these displays are an optional performance focused on what we would like to convey about our gender to others. So the specific quote is, "Display is focused on the meanings that cues have for the actor rather than on the interpretations of those cues by the audience." A hermit who puts on makeup every morning is still engaging in feminine gender display, even if there's no one there to witness it. My question is, are there ways that you engage in your gender/sexual expression that are only for you, or do you feel like you're putting on a performance for others?
When you're talking about the quote that you selected, so that would be an example of the person doing a gender performance for themselves since they're not going out. Okay. I think that I consume and I actively seek to consume lots of like queer media. Do I often do that and then later like engage with others about it in like fan spaces or like share it with people? Yes. But I would say probably equally half the time. Like I'm also just like doing it for myself. Like the book that I have on my bedside table right now is like a lesbian like romance book. And I read like a Malama one over New Year's.
Mhm.
I don't know. Fan fiction also, like usually like if I'm watching just like media that's like it's maybe not like romance based, or there are certain characters who are not even like they're not even like the focus of the story, like in my mind, like, you come up with things about them like for them.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, Todoroki is obviously gay, and so he's dating his best friend,
Yeah.
obviously. And I would like, I'm not gonna like sit there with my roommates who I'm like watching this show with and be like, oh my god, that's fucking gay. Like, let's talk about how this is gay. I'm just gonna like sit on my own time and like think about it or like consume some fan content about it. No.
Yeah.
Recently I watched a show where it's like the main two characters like are men who are gay and they get together. So I would say like media is definitely something that I like. I don't know, does that count? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
for something that I like do on my own time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm also kind of thinking about music. Like some of the bands that I listen to are like people joke. They're like, oh my God, like Stray Kids is for the bisexuals. And I'm like, well, here's me, like a bisexual listening to Stray Kids. I feel like that's more controversial, but like people say the same thing about Taylor Swift.
Yeah, for sure.
Or like that's again like projecting like a queer narrative onto like a piece of media that you consume so
Mhm.
that you can like make it relatable to your life, like a song. That's like kind of what I can think of. Reputation album, Gay as Hell
Oh,
also.
absolutely.
Gay.
Absolutely.
Album for the gays.
This one is also kind of lengthy because it has another quote in it, but it's important because I think it's really cool. So there's a podcast, which you can listen to if you want to, but it's called We Can Do Hard Things, and it's hosted by Glennon Doyle, who I love. And the episode that this quote is from is they have a guest on there. Have you heard of, do you know who Alok Menon is?
I think you told us about him
Probably.
or them.
So yeah, so they are trans femme, gender non-conforming. They're a writer and artist, and LGBTQ plus rights activist, and they do like all kinds of like performance art and whatnot. But so they were also talking about the concept of gender as a performance. And so the host, Glennon, she says, I can find this thing that's like a wild moving faith inside of me, inside of my identity, like my real self, but I can't find any gender. I can't find it inside of me. I can only find gender on me. I have a close transgender friend who can find gender inside of them, and that's what they're expressing. So, this idea of how gender is like a mandatory performance, but not born in us, is that how you experience gender? Or do you experience gender as a real, true thing inside of you that you're expressing on the outside? So, my question is, do you believe that gender is innate, or do you believe that it sticks to us from the external world, from outside?
I think it definitely sticks to you from the outside. I say this, I don't say that a lot, but I say this frequently enough that my roommate likes to say, Ceci, that's a really fucking trans thing of you to say. And I'm always like, okay. But it's like, to me, there are many men that I look at that I would be like, I just wish that I like was them. Not that I just like looked like them, just like that I wish I was them. It's not like such a heavy like desire that I feel like maybe I am like trans or like gender fluid, because I am just so comfortable, like I said earlier, about like being perceived as a woman. Like that is not like bothersome to me at all. But it's also like the desire to like be male is like so few and far between. It's like I feel like it's like irrelevant to me, kind of basically like all the time, except in those few moments. But it's also not that I like feel like I am a woman. It's more just like if people are like putting that onto me, I'm just like, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know? So like when people there are only like certain specific moments where like I feel like excited to like be a woman, or like super like into the idea of being a woman. Like if I have on like really like a very feminine outfit and I feel like I look good, I'm like, okay, like I'm excited to like be a woman right now, and like
Yeah.
for people to see me like this, and like I like feel confident like in this way. And like I feel very girly and I like that. I don't know, maybe like engaging in like self-care acts that I feel like are like traditionally like feminine, like, you know, like shaving like your legs and like your whole body and stuff like that. Um, things like that like make me feel like pretty and girly, and like I'm like I like doing this because like it makes me feel girly,
Yeah.
and that's good and it makes me happy. But those are also just like I'm not thinking about that on like a daily basis either, really.
Yeah.
And it's definitely like the only reason that those things are really associated with being a woman is because society has made those associated with being a woman.
Yeah.
You know, those are definitely like outward things that I would say that are making me feel that way, but it's still exciting to me.
Do you think that if they like weren't associated with being a woman, they would still be just as exciting for you to do them if they
um
didn't have the gender stuck to them?
I think there are definitely things that I like about those, if they were not associated with gender, that I would still like doing them. Like shaving my legs like feels nice, you know? But like what if that was like reversed and that was considered like a masculine thing, was to shave your legs? Like would I do it as often as I do it? I can't really say.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think maybe like the getting dressed thing, like the way that I dress when I feel confident and like womanly. I think that is like because I feel like girly. Like I do like that. But also I could like dress like mask and like feel confident that way as well. And like be okay with that.
Yeah.
But it's just like the dressing femininely is like more accessible. And like the way that I just like feel comfortable in my body, it highlights the features about me that I like, you know. Like when Alex brings up the thing of like that's a very trans thing of you to say, Ceci. I'm like, well, I think I like being a woman like enough that I don't feel like
That's not gonna
I'm
send me
I'm
in a
not gonna get
spiral.
into
That's
it.
not gonna give me a crisis. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
One last question. This one's kind of silly, and I put it in there because I thought it was funny. So it's from the podcast episode that last quote was from. There's it's a two-part episode because they were just really long. So in the second episode with Alok in it, they do like comedy, and they do like performance art and all kinds of stuff. So in one of their shows, they referenced it was like a from a Muppet movie or something. It was a TikTok sound for a while. Where it's like that song where it's like, "Am I a man or am I a Muppet?" That one. And they
Yeah.
said on the podcast they were talking about how they said that, and they were like, "I'm not a woman, I'm a Muppet," and I would like to know how that resonates with you.
I hate Muppets like
Perfect.
with a passion.
Okay.
Like, the Muppet movies gave me
Yeah.
nightmares as a child.
Mm.
So to me, that was always very disturbing,
Yeah.
and I hated it. And I hate anything to do with Muppets. So I would much rather be a man than a Muppet. And also, I am a person who likes things on a like a more serious note. I am a person who likes things to be clear and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so don't like ambiguity that comes with the label of a Muppet. So I'm gonna say I don't, it doesn't
That's
resonate with me
interesting.
and I don't like it.
The ambiguity that comes with being a Muppet. See, I love that. I thrive in the ambiguity. I say, I'm not a man, I'm not a woman, I'm just made of felt, and that's all you need to know. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
that was
you.
a fun interview. Those are good questions.
Thanks.